Hi, my name is Daraich. I'm a history teacher, and my passion is for ancient and early medieval history. My aim is to make this accessible to the modern audience and to share my passion with you. Today we're going to be exploring Daraich, next to the village of Ardentinny. Ardentinny is an old Gaelic word which means the beacon on the high place. In the past, when travellers were travelling across Loch Long, they would light the fire up on the hillside behind me to let the ferry over in Cowal to come and collect them. We know this as the Dukes of Argyll used this in the 17th century when travelling from their castle in Vitrified to the second castle over in the Rosneath Peninsula. A dun is an ancient or a medieval fort. In the British Isles, it is mainly a kind of hill fort and also a kind of Atlantic roundhouse. The term dun comes from the Scots Gaelic dun, meaning fort. It matches up roughly with the Old Welsh word din, where the current Welsh word dinas or city comes from. In some areas, particularly around the Firth of Clyde, duns were built on any suitable crag or hillock which afforded a view and control of the landscape thereabouts. Duns seem to have arrived in Britain with the Celts round about the 7th century BC. Early duns had near vertical ramparts made of stone and timber. The vitrified forts that we find across Scotland nowadays are the remains of duns that have been set on fire and where the stones have been partly melted, just as it happened at Daraich. The use of duns continued in some parts of the British Isles into the Middle Ages. In northern Britain, where duns may occupy similar locations to hill forts, they tend to be smaller structures enclosing a smaller area and having much thicker walls. They would appear to be the family refuges of local clans, but it's possible that some may have been occupied continuously. That is, in fact, they were the domestic dwellings where people lived on their day-to-day lives. The walls were built of dry stone and are usually massive, but not always. Some galleried duns have very massive walls, often 6 to 7 metres across. They would enclose cells, passages and staircases leading to the wall head, where there may have been a palisade or a catwalk for the defenders to walk along and defend. 11 sites in Cowal and Argyll are classified as duns, of which Daraich is one. Inside duns, families lived in roundhouses. They were simple one-roomed homes with a pointed thatched roof. In the centre of the roundhouse was a fire where meals were cooked in a cauldron. Around the walls were jars for storing food and beds made from straw covered with animal skins. Iron Age farmers grew crops and vegetables. They kept geese, goats and pigs and had large herds of cows and flocks of sheep. Some people worked as potters, carpenters and metalworkers. Men and boys would often train as warriors. They had to be prepared to fight at any time. The best way to reach Daraich is to park at Ardentinny Beach car park and then head off following the Forestry Commission track along the north-eastern side of the site. For about 15 minutes since we left the car along the kind of northwest side of Glenfinnet, and down behind me you can see the flat valley floor. Now the important thing about Argyll is that it's mostly made up of peninsulas cut through with sea logs. Flat land would have been at a premium for the people scraping a living here in the ancient medieval periods. Therefore this valley, Glenfinnet behind me, would have been premium real estate, and that shows us the importance of Daraich. This would have been the seat of the local lord or chief of this area. Behind me you can see land which would be excellent for growing crops or for pasture for animals. Just down to my left over here is the dun itself sitting on the valley floor, which we're going to have a look at next. Behind me you can see Daraich situated at the heart of Glenfinnet's valley floor. From its situation you can see it would dominate the farmland surrounding it, giving the chieftain control of the best land in the valley. Situated where it is, about half a mile down to my right, down here, would have been the beach of Loch Long, where the chieftain may have stationed his ships. At present, the dun is quite heavily forested and overgrown. It's quite choked out with rhododendrons, so it's hard to make out the archaeology. We'll work our way down and we'll have a look and see what we can find. Okay, walked for about 20 minutes now along the Forestry Christian Trail. After a while you'll come across a dry stone dike that heads off down into a deforested area that's just above Daraich itself. This is where we're going to cut down towards the actual dun to get down there and explore it. Make sure you follow the track of this walk. Tracking down through the deforested area just here above the dun, you can see there's a large dry stone wall that runs down and marks the edge of this area. Now for me, I think this is quite significant. It doesn't look quite like your average dry stone wall in this area of Argyll. It's possible that the stone here may have been robbed out from the top of the dun and stolen from the ramparts there and used to construct this wall a few centuries ago. Here we are now on the valley floor, having come down through the deforested section. The heavily forested dun is behind me, cloaked in rhododendrons. But as we look around us here, we have the farmland that immediately surrounds what would have been the old fort in the Iron Age period. Now looking down, the soil is typical Argyll soil. So even though we're touting how good this flat valley floor is, you can see the ground is fairly soft, squishy and crap. So it might not have been that great for growing crops, but it would have been good as pasture land for animals to feed the people that lived in the dun behind me. Now the northwestern corner of the dun is just behind me over here. As you can see now, it's really heavily overgrown with rhododendrons and large trees, perhaps even oaks. But if you imagine that without that shroud of vegetation around it, it would have been quite a significant crag that would have dominated the valley floor. The defenders sitting on top of it, behind the ramparted walls, would be able to easily control the landscape thereabouts. The northwestern summit of Daraich is just behind me, atop its crag. Now at its maximum height is round about 30 to 35 metres. There's an imposing viewpoint over the valley floor round about me. Now to get in to the top of the dun from this side requires to pretty much wade through an awful lot of vegetation. The best way to do it is to track round the summit of the crag and then through the eastern end instead. Southeastern corner of the crag is a cleft in the rock that allows you to scramble in and get into the eastern enclosure at the summit of the dun. That's one of the easiest ways in. The main entrance which has been used is further round the side of the crag. We're now on the southwestern side of the crag. There's a cleft between the two summits of the peak. This is where the entrance point would have been when the dun was still in use. As you walk up the path up to the top of the dun, you start to see bits of discarded rubble. These would have been the remains of the rampart walls that would have defended the upper enclosure. As you climb up the saddle into the dun, you can see the rock face here beside me. This is where the fortified dun itself would have been based, on the summit of the crag. You can see the path leading up behind me. This would have been the main access thoroughfare. On my other side over here, we have an enclosure, possibly guarded as well, which may have been a space for workshops, extra buildings, or even a place in times of danger where they could have brought the livestock in and penned it in to stop it being robbed by raiders. Standing here on the saddle between the two peaks of the crag, you can see the height of the summit behind me. Now that rock face behind me would have had a 12-foot thick rampart protecting the inhabitants inside. You can still see some of the stonework covered in moss on the hillside behind me. Having entered the dun through the path, you come to the main height of the crag itself. Now the Canmore report shows that the archaeologists surveyed it and found a wall here facing onto the entranceway that would have been 12 foot thick and 4 foot high. Now some of the rubble of this is obviously shrouded by the vegetation and the moss and so on, but bits of the stonework are still visible here behind me. At the rampart at the southeastern corner of the summit of the dun, we find some information that could point to what happened to the dun at the end of its life. This here is vitrified stone. Now what that means is stone that has been changed or altered by being burned under extreme heat. Now the way that rampart walls were constructed in Iron Age duns in Scotland was that it was a timber lacework filled with stone rubble. Now these timbers, when they're set fire to, created corridors or passages through the stonework that allowed superheated air to rush through, heating up the rock to the extent that it would melt and become glassy or discoloured. This is possibly what we have here, signalling to us that Daraich may have been destroyed by fire. At the end of the rampart wall, at the southeastern corner of the summit, you can see just here behind me, we have the entrance to the inner sanctum of the dun. This is where the chief himself would have had his lodgings. This has been Daraich. If you liked today's video, please hit like or hit the subscribe button to see more. And if you come and visit it yourself, drop a comment in the comment section below.